What up, racer? ItsJerone here, and welcome back to another F1 2021 League Racing video. Today we're here in Texas for the 12th round of the AOR season, and I have to say I really love driving this track. I was a bit skeptical when I had my first league race here in FRL, because I always had quite unpleasant experiences in my career modes when I came to USA. But after getting second place in the FRL race and just experiencing this track a lot more, I'm actually quite positive and optimistic about getting a good result here. Looking at the standings, I am 26 points ahead of Solid, who got demoted from P2 to P3 in Italy due to a timing glitch, and I'm 41 points ahead of my teammate, and of course I'm looking to consolidate my lead during this GP. As you can see on the weather forecast, rain in qualifying, but will be dry in the race, so I will just load my dry setup. And what's very interesting, you can see if you pay attention to the bottom of the screen, you can still activate your DRS. So the track is just about not wet enough for DRS to be disabled, although you can quite clearly see we're going out on intermediates. The track is certainly very greasy because there's not an insane amount of grip here, as we currently go for the first time through the S's. But it's a really interesting scenario. It's a little bit wet, but it's not wet enough to the point where DRS is disabled. So I completed, or I'm about to complete my first lap here, heading onto the main straight. Once again, still opening DRS. We're not sure if the conditions will deteriorate or not. So it is important to set a couple of good laps early on. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, heading over the start-finish line for the second time. I put in a lap that's good enough for provisional pole position, and with the warmer tires here, I probably should have continued immediately here, because I still have enough fuel to do one extra lap. But yeah, I'm not really sure why I decided to stop here. It's quite interesting, the intermediates on this game. They really do seem to work at quite high temperatures, so you usually need about, well, 2 laps, yeah, let's say 1 push lap, to really get them up to temperature. But what's also interesting, you can see here, we're switching between the inters and the slicks, and you can see, at this moment in time, the slicks are 4/10 faster than the intermediate tires, even though it is raining. So, a really interesting scenario here. You can see a couple of drivers opting to indeed go out on the slick tires, whereas some others are opting for intermediate tires again. So it will be really interesting to see how this qualifying scenario works out. You can still see, just selected my soft tires. The delta between the intermediates and the softs did not really change. I think I stayed in the pits for about 4 or 5 minutes. And if you really paid attention there, you could see I had switched to slicks, but then the message came up from, "Are you sure you don't want to switch to the recommended compound?" And I clicked yes by accident, and I was sort of spamming my buttons to go out as quickly as possible. So by accident I'm out on intermediate tires again, which was not really what I wanted. And these tires are about 4/10 faster if the delta is actually accurate. So there's nothing I can do about it now. I have a set of slicks, or a set of intermediate tires on for my last run in qualifying here. And let's try to improve my time. Currently in P3 still, but there are quite a couple of drivers out on slicks and some others who are aiming to improve on their intermediate tire times. So going through sector 1 here, it's quite good. No major mistakes. Missed the apex for that left-hander a little bit, which then causes me to run on that outside curb, where you don't really find traction in these intermediate conditions. Then heading into the hairpin for the main straight, make sure you line up your car such that you can get a good exit on this main straight, because you definitely need the straight line speed and the momentum in these wet conditions. So currently a little bit more than a tenth up, heading into the second part of the second sector, which is the most technical part of the track. Running a little bit too deep, a little bit too late on the brakes, which lost me a little bit of time. Then going through these flowing corners, you need to be very careful both on traction and on the braking. And it's a little bit okay here, and I regained a little bit of the time, so we're once again more than a tenth up. in this final sector, but then I tried to push it a bit too much and ran very wide, which then compromised my line, heading into the penultimate corner as well. And then coming across the line, trying to be quite aggressive on the throttle. It's a little improvement, but it's not enough. We stay in 5th place for the moment, with Basti in 4th, my championship rival in 3rd. And then 2 drivers actually improved their time on slick tires, including my teammate and a new driver for this league, Iceman. Welcome, by the way, Iceman and Sneaky Ninja. Yes, we have 2 ninjas now. We have Solid Ninja and Sneaky Ninja, so that will be interesting for the rest of the season. And also good to see that we have 16 drivers for this race. It's always a lot more fun when there's, well, nearly a full grid. So because I qualified on intermediate tires, and since the conditions for the race will be dry, I have a free tire choice now while starting in 5th place. And ahead of this race, I did quite a bit of practice, and I realized that in theory the 2-stop is definitely the faster strategy, where the soft compound is actually the best race tire, as counterintuitive as that sounds. So I decided to start all the mediums here, and as you can see, both Mercedes cars followed me right behind me, and a couple of drivers down the field, with Sestar starting on hards, also on alternative strategies, the rest on softs. And it will be really interesting whether a 1-stop or a 2-stop will be faster this race, but more on that later. More important things right now are the 5 red lights that are on, and we'll see, can I get a good launch relative to the soft drivers? And I definitely get a good launch, but then one of the Mercedes cars right behind me had a really good launch and tried to attack me down into turn 1, and I'm not exactly sure what happened on the inside here, but both Mercedes cars are not in P6 and P7 anymore. They've fallen down the order, and that means that I'm essentially the lead car on the alternative strategy now, and I managed to maintain my 5th place here. So I was quite happy with the start. I think the outside line is the most comfortable line to be in, and I was quite happy to be starting on the outside there. So managed to stay out of trouble, which is always necessary at the start. No wings lost, no contact made. And let's push on for now. And pushing on is definitely something I need to do, because if you're not really familiar with the tire difference or the grip difference between mediums and softs around here, at the early stages it's probably more than a second that I'm slower relative to the soft runners. So we're looking at the start again, and you can see there's quite a bit of contact behind me. Both Mercedes getting tangled up, and then Bank Guy as well. He hit the back of my car, I think, and then on the exit I'm not sure if he lost on himself or if he made a bit of contact with one of the Mercedes cars, but anyway, he's been spun around. He's now dead last in this race, and yeah, it does mean that I'm essentially the only alternative strategy runner now, which I wasn't particularly happy with, because that means I'm now more vulnerable to Gabs and Rally Monster behind me, who have both had a good start because they gained places. In the meanwhile, my teammate overtook Iceman and Pasti overtook Solid as well, my bad. So quite a couple of position changes in front of me. I'm still in 5th place, and I was pushing really hard these first 2 laps to try and stay within DRS range. I knew it would be a very difficult task, and so far I think I'm doing quite well to keep the gap at exactly 1 second or 1.1 seconds on this not the main straight, start-finish straight. And I was closing in quite a bit on the brakes here, but you'll see now, going through these S's, I was running quite an aggressive setup in terms of wings. I think it was 6-7 wings. That's relatively low for USA, I would say. So I do have great straight line speed, but I'm not particularly fast through the 1st and 3rd sector. And unfortunately, you can see there was nothing I could do about this, and DRS detection point is right here, and I'm outside of a second, unfortunately, here on lap 3. And also, I have the Alfa Romeo of Gabs 4/10 behind me, so I was planning on letting him go here. So I used a little bit of ERS just to get a bit of acceleration on the exit, but he actually didn't really fancy attacking me, I guess. So In the end, I ended up using a little bit more ERS further down the straight in order to make sure I could stay ahead for the straight. But this is of course not a good tactic to keep up for the entire race. And lap 4 here, the softs are still significantly faster than my medium tires. And I was planning on letting gaps pass, but ideally I would have liked to stay ahead of Rally Monster as well. But you can see he dived it down my inside as well here. Not much I could do, and I lost 2 places in one straight. So we're down to 7th place in the race, but it's not too bad, because at this stage I managed to follow the cars ahead of me quite well. You can see here, I think in front they were fighting a little bit, so that helped Rally Monster and Gaps to catch up to the front runners again. As you can see, my teammate coming into the pit lane, and she's the first to blink, going for quite an aggressive undercut here, and also sticking to a 2-stop strategy. Then halfway through lap 7, not sure what happened to Iceman, but he must have missed his braking point completely, or he would have to take avoiding action perhaps. So that means that now the Alfa Romeo and the AlphaTauri are battling, and Iceman trying it around the outside, which turns to the inside here, and he at least holds on to 4th position, as actually Pedro behind, trying something really clever and really aggressive as well, trying to go around my outside there due to my lower wings. That actually was an overtaking opportunity for him there, but it was sort of like a Lewis versus Max from I think 2-3 years ago, where Lewis also ran wide, and same happened to Pedro. He couldn't make it work around the outside of me there. In the meanwhile, you can see quite a couple of other drivers heading into the pit lane. Gabs pit on the previous lap, and I didn't manage to overtake him before the pit stops again. So we'll see where we filter out. And you can see Iceman coming out ahead, but actually I'm ahead now of Gabs and also Marcus. So I'm not sure what happened to them. I'm pretty sure they've been, or they must have been battling on their outlap. Otherwise, I don't really see how I managed to get ahead. But of course that's good for my race, because that's at least one less car to overtake. So I was quite happy with that. And what I was also quite happy with was the fact that Iceman was right ahead of me, and he actually opted to go onto hard tires, which I personally think is an interesting strategy. I really don't rate the hards around this track, so we'll see what he can do. But he does offer me a really nice slipstream here with DRS, and that was just perfect timing really. So I gained time with the fact that Iceman was driving there. With DRS you can gain about 4/10 down the main straight, so that was quite good for my race. Then we're back up to 5th place in this race with, you can see, an alternative strategy runner of Pyro right in front of me. He started right behind me, but we've already made a pit stop again, and we're already right up to the back of him again. And this is essentially the same scenario as with Iceman. This is just really good timing for me, because I close up right to his gearbox at the start of the straight. So he's actually opting to take a bit of a defensive line, but realistically there's nothing he can do. I don't have to use a lot of ERS to get this move done, and in the end it only gains me time. So quite happy with that. You can see lap 12 here, Solid Ninja coming into the pit lane. That's relatively late, I would say, for if you were planning for a 2-stop, so most likely he's going for a 1-stop. Rally Monsters into the pit lane as well. So we're back up to 4th place in this race now, with Tash in 2nd, who still needs to pit. Then it's my teammate in 3rd on a set of mediums, and also 2-stopping. So that's the position I need to gain on track. And I think, once again, quite fortunately for me here, Tash was holding up my teammate a little bit, and I could just sneak into DRS range here for the main straight. So just gonna use one little burst, and for the rest of the straight I'm just gonna save my ERS. Then heading on to the next lap, you can see, yeah, exactly, Pasty coming into the pit lane as well. He's going for a set of mediums, so he's also planning on going until the end of the race, and he filters out about 2.5 seconds behind me. As in the meanwhile, you could also see my teammate making a move down into turn 1 for the lead of this race now on the AlphaTauri driver of Tash, who still needs to pit. So we're going to stay on board now. My soft compound tires are way better than Tash's 13 laps old medium tires at this stage. So it was quite easy to keep up with him through these S's here and close up a bit. And you can also see that in terms of braking potential. You can just see how much we close up to him. And we're nearly right on his gearbox for the start of the straight. This will be a little bit more of a difficult move because he does have ERS or DRS as well. So I have to use quite a bit of my energy to get past, and taking a little bit of a defensive line just to make sure he wouldn't go back up my inside. But that was quite clearly not gonna happen. So right behind my teammate now, and we actually make a little bit of contact there. But we were in audio communication as always, and she just said, "I'll let you go, I'll try to stick in your DRS," and it sort of worked for a lap and a half. I think this was the final time she managed to get DRS, but quite clearly my softs are still way faster than the mediums. And you can also see that we're skipping a couple of laps onto lap 18, and you can see heading into the braking zone, the gap between me and my teammate, or between me and Pasti as well, was exactly 4 seconds. And during this second and third sector, Pasti and my teammate will be battling quite a bit. So that's of course quite good for my race. It will be really interesting to see how the one stop filters out relative to the two stop. You can see that in the meanwhile Pasti is now 5 seconds behind, and Rally Monster right behind there as well, also planning on a two stop. Then having a look at the minimap, behind Rally Monster's Red Bull, there's still Iceman in his AlphaTauri car on a hard compound of tire. And he's forming a little bit of a train, which is currently 9 seconds behind me. Due to qualifying being in intermediate conditions, I still have a fresh set of soft left, of course. And from my experience with testing, I recognize that you basically can gain about 17-18 seconds relative to someone who's staying out on medium tires on a one stop. So it will be really interesting to see whether I'm able to overtake all these cars, but actually it turns out I don't have to overtake them at all, because Rally Monster crashed out from, I'm pretty sure that's 5th place in the race then, and it actually causes a safety car. So this is really fortunate timing for me. I was planning on coming in on this lap, so this is a perfect opportunity for me to stick on a fresh set of softs. And you can see basically that whole train of Iceman and, well, everyone who was in that train decided to come in, except Pasti. He's the only one who decided to stay out on his, well, sort of relative fresh medium compound. Then we're running through the race order right now and also checking who has warnings and who has not. For me personally, I'm on 0 warnings at this stage, which I was very, very satisfied with. I don't think I've ever seen a race around USA, or at least I've never experienced a race where I had 0 warnings at this stage. Not sure what Pasti was doing on the safety car restart. He got quite close to the safety car restart, and I think some people behind thought we had already gone, but of course Pasti still had to wait for the safety car to actually come into the pit lane. So interesting scenario, but we have our fresh set of softs now, and you could already notice on that previous stint how much faster I was relative to my teammate and also relative to Pasti. So now I have a fresh set of softs relative to older tires for Pasti. Then further behind you can see a teammate fit on a fresh set of softs, but on a 3-second time penalty. Solid Ninja, I think at this stage on 2 warnings. And Iceman actually opting for a set of mediums, which I thought was an interesting decision with 10 laps to go. With 10 laps to go, it's way faster to go for a set of softs instead of a set of mediums. But anyways, we're lining up Pasti for the lead of the race. So we're going to use quite a bit of ERS. Of course, the DRS has been disabled after this safety car period. We're jinking to the inside, braking at about 130 meters. And I actually cut the inside of this corner a little bit. But sort of due to my history with Pasty and sometimes the contact that occurs from it. I didn't want to take any risks, and I'd rather take the corner cut warning and leave Pasty enough space than try to force an aggressive move and get damage from that. So I cut the inside a little bit, but overall it's okay. I think I took a warning for it. In the meanwhile, you could also see my teammate following me through later on in the second sector. And at the end of Sector 3, Pasty has also picked up his 3-second time penalty. Meanwhile, I'm still on 1 warning, with Solid only on 2 warnings at this stage. And we're gonna stay on board for this lap, because you can see, gap to my teammate, 1.1 seconds. But unfortunately, I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think I'm that great when it comes to extracting maximum performance out of fresh tires. And my teammate unfortunately for me, closed up quite a bit on that lap. So I couldn't really pull out of DRS. Here you can see my overtake on Pasty from the helicopter cam. And yeah, just cut the inside a little bit there, but I don't think that was too bad. Then heading on to lap 26, 3 laps to go. You can see my teammate closed up quite a bit on me, and she's actually deciding to go for a move down the inside here at turn 1. But I get the cutback. I noticed that she would run quite deep, and I managed to stay in 1st place for the moment. You can also see Solid Ninja's been able to get past Pasty. Pasty now dropping to 4th place on his older medium tires. Really unfortunate for him. I would have liked to see how my 2-stop strategy would filter out against his 1-stop strategy. Then on the main straight of lap 26 here, you can quite clearly see my teammate has the overspeed, and I've learned from my FRL race where I decided to defend for a couple of laps against Heyoo and drain my battery. It's not the way to go. It's just better to sit behind for a little bit, save up a bit of ERS, and then attack in one of the final laps. And actually in this case I left it all the way to the final lap to try and overtake my teammate again. I'm pretty sure she's actually on 4 warnings at this stage, so in terms of the possibility of a penalty getting removed for her is quite slim, because she would need to get 2 warnings removed. In the meanwhile, also Solid Ninja's picked up his 3-second time penalty. Gabs has managed to get into 4th place in the race, and let's get on to more important things at the moment, and that is my attempt to overtake my teammate. I actually got very tail happy on the exit for the main straight, and you can see red light flashing. Myself, I have enough ERS left, DRS enabled, and I slip past for the lead of the race again. I wanted to finish this race in the lead, so 2 more sectors left, defending the inside here, making sure she doesn't get a move done. Once again, going defensive here for this last sectors, and I was quite convinced I would get the win at this point, because it's very hard to overtake in these last 3 corners. You can see the gap is 4/10 going through the penultimate corner, then going through the final corner. It will be the 3rd win in the AOR this season, and actually in all my AOR career as well. And that was a very good drive by me. I was very happy with that. Quite unfortunate for Pasty, because in the end he finished somewhere in 6th or 7th place, I think. And without the safety car, he probably would have been comfortably 2nd, or maybe winning the race in case I could not get through the traffic. It was a little bit of a shame that the safety car was called out. I would have loved to fight it out on track and see whether the 1-stop or the 2-stop actually was the best way to go. I'm still quite convinced I could have got the win on my 1-stop. I think one of the AlphaTauri cars had pitted that was following Iceman. So I think there were only Iceman and then Gabs and someone else left in that train. And I think it would have been relatively easy to pass them, because at that stage I think my tires would be about 1.5 seconds faster each lap. Anyways though, that's all what if. It did not actually happen. And I'm actually also quite happy it went this way, because now I basically had to put in less effort in order to get my win. And I extend my lead in the championship a little bit more relative to my two main title rivals in this league. With 5 more races left in this league, I would say subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss them, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye bye.